We are so removed sometimes from who we're serving. I often ask, is this a place you would want for your kid, your mother, your brother, your sister, or your grandmother, whoever? If not, do better. Advocate for better.
Welcome to the Passive House podcast, brought to you by Passive House Accelerator, a catalyst for zero carbon building. For news, inspiration, and connections from all flavours of Passive House, check out passivehouseaccelerator.com. Sign up to receive regular updates about events, get your questions answered, and contribute to the community dialogue. There's loads of free information for experienced professionals and people just starting out on their Passive House journey. We hope to see you at one of our weekly Passive House Accelerator live webinars. In the meantime, here's this week's Passive House podcast. Welcome back to the Passive House podcast. I'm Matthew Cutler, coming to you from Auckland in New Zealand.
And I'm Zach Simke, coming to you from Seattle, Washington.
How are you going, Zach?
I'm good. How about you?
Yeah, pretty good. Pretty good into March now. So that means that summer is over for us. And starting to feel it, get a little bit cool. And I've suffered a little bit of illness for the first time for a little while, actually. But I'm not sure that was weather related. But yeah, a bit of a change in seasons. And obviously, just quite a lot going on around the world at the moment, but
yes,
I think we should not really dwell on that too much, and we should talk about Passive House.
I think that sounds good. Let's do that. I'm all for it.
Yeah, I figure people are here to hear something positive, and I mean everything's a little bit related, but we do have I think a really interesting interview. It's something a little bit different from what a lot of our audience would be used to this week, because we're literally looking on the inside and about how the interior of buildings make us feel. And I really enjoyed that perspective. So we'll get into that very soon. But before we do, got a few people to thank.
We sure do. So a big thank you to Oakley Woodworks, who is the sponsor of the week and also a brand new patron sponsor of the Passive House Accelerator. So a big thank you to Oakley for making our work possible here at the Accelerator, especially this week as a sponsor of the week. And also thank you to our stakeholder partner, NYSERDA, the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority. Thanks to our founding sponsors, 475 High Performance Building Supply, Ingui Architecture, Partel, Rockwell North America, and Zola Windows. And thanks to our champion sponsors, Bewizo, Cascadia Windows and Doors, European Architectural Supply, Icon Windows and Doors, Intelligent Membranes, LG Air Conditioning Technologies, Proseco, and Source 2050.
All right, well, we are privileged this week to hear from Kia Weatherspoon. Unfortunately, we don't have Mary joining us this week because Mary actually had a conversation with Kia, but we're pleased to have been able to listen to that. Kia Weatherspoon is the founder and director of her own company, Determined by Design. She's very passionate. She calls herself a design equity advocate, and she's an experienced speaker and educator in this space as well. She has been on the Accelerator in the past and is coming up at a event very soon, which we'll talk about at the end of this episode. So let's get into Mary James's conversation with Kia Weatherspoon.
Well, welcome to the Passive House podcast. I'm Mary James, and I'm here today with Kia Weatherspoon, president and founder of Determined by Design. And I want to mention right off the top that she will be speaking at our next conference, Reimagine Buildings Multifamily, which is coming up on March 12th. So welcome, Kia. I'm delighted you could join me today. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me. Thank you for bringing me back to the Passive House community. Well, let's start with some basic information about your background and how you got interested in interior design. I'm going to try and give the short version. I always answer this question by asking a question. And just think about it. Do you remember the first space that actually made you feel something? Wow.
And I pose that question, and I see you, Mary. Just sit with it. Just sit with it while I share the first space that made me feel something. The first space that ever made me feel something is when I went to go visit my brother in prison. And he was incarcerated for 15 years. And that would take my family on this journey of moving in and out of prison facilities. And I just remember the anger, the frustration, and the sadness. I felt those emotions as I was walking into those spaces. And over the years, I would feel that same emotion for the kids coming to visit their fathers, the spouses coming to visit the men, the parents, the siblings. I even started to think about it from the perspective of the guards and then the men who were in there. And that was the first time space viscerally impacted my life, and I just felt it. And I would sit with that, and it would come up again for me. Fast forward when I joined the military. I joined the active duty Air Force in 2001. And shortly after I got to my first duty station, I was deployed because September 11th happened 2 months later. And it was my first out of the country. It was my first time away with my family. I was going to war. I was in the Middle East. And I was at Al-Udeid Air Base in Doha, Qatar, back when it was a bare base. And I needed some privacy. I was in a tent with about 13 other women. So I took some sheets, I hung it from the top of the tent, and I made 3 sheet walls. And I bawled like a baby for 15 minutes. And it was something about how that space healed me, and it brought me comfort and solace. And I would do that on 4 more deployments. And when I got out of the military, I said, I want to do this thing where I create space for people. And that's how I became an interior designer.
Wow, not at all the pathway that I expected you to be.
Me neither, girl. Me neither.
But that's great. Yeah.
And not to get a little too woo-woo, but never in a million years when I was a little girl would I thought this is what I would be doing. And I think, life can lead you to a profession, or it can lead you to a purpose that you achieve through your profession. And in those 2 moments and those 2 stories, people always think it's this like, oh, it's so cool. And my response to that is a direct reflection of the work that Determined by Design does. Is that a cool story? Because I just said I had to go to prison and war to realize space matters. That's not the way.
Yeah, and how much it can affect you. Yeah, when you asked the question, what I thought about is the sort of, I always grew up very chaotic apartments, like I grew up in New York City, the apartments were small, always felt crowded and chaotic. And I have a friend who, like, when he likes something, it's clean and simple. And anyway, it's a little bit, when I looked at your website, it's not exactly clean and simple. Those weren't the first 2 adjectives, but there's always something popping in that's just like brings delight. And it just, and it doesn't feel cluttered, definitely doesn't feel cluttered, which in my experience is a high praise. Anyway, and I just recommend everybody go and look at your website, Determined by Design, because there are just some great projects to see.
Thank you. Spaces are meant to be felt. And I think we often perceive space as being seen, but how can they be felt? That is the thing we strive for the most, where people can see themselves in the work, but also feel the depth and the contextualness of it. So yeah.
Yeah. And I wonder, I'm sure going to be extremely difficult to try and condense your particular approach to interior design and process into a few sentences. But if you could just tell us a little bit about what your priorities are when you come to a project.
So our priorities are always the people we are in service to, first and foremost. We are in service to bringing beauty, joy, softness, and adornment to all people. Our process, and we operate predominantly in affordable housing, where oftentimes we're told, like, we don't need an interior design consultant on these types of projects for these people. Won't go down that tangent. But for us, you know, a lot of times people think about style and interior design, but the framework for what we do on any of our projects is we start with these three threads: ancestry, legacy, and identity. So we're always looking, who were the original caretakers of the land, right? Because the site is a man-made construct, but we are always looking for that indigenous, that heritage story of the ancestry of the land, of the community, of the neighborhood. Then we're looking at the identity. Who were the people, places, historical moments, organizations, migration patterns, artisans, makers, architects? Who are the identities of the people and the places and the things that make that community what it is? And then we look at the identity, right? Who is there now? What are they doing to kind of move the community forward and honor that community and build on the community story? So those three threads are how we build our design concepts. Our design concept is like a love letter and a prayer to the community. And because it's rooted specific to that neighborhood, that project location, every concept is different. And that concept dictates every single design decision we made, from the floor pattern to the floor material to the textures, all the way fast forward to the fabric on the chair. That's our design process. And I'm 99.9% certain that is what's kept us in business for 13 years, because how we design is rooted in the people story, not ego, not style, but the people story. That's what our design process prioritizes.
That's great. I mean, it's interesting because when I was thinking about, you did a presentation a little more than 2 years ago on Dairy Farm in Washington, D.C., which again was an affordable housing project. And I was really struck by you talking about the history of the site and how your research helped inform your design choices. And I love that it makes this bridge to what went on before, and the way you highlighted history, that it's so good to not have that be lost.
Yeah. Because I think design, and when I say design, I'm talking about like big D design, interior design, architecture, right? There's a lot of ego that drives those professions at times, right? We want to have a signature style. We want you to know that this is a X, Y, and Z firm's project or building, or this is our aesthetic. It's not about me. It's not about us as practitioners. It's about the community. So that process and bringing it to all of our projects is important, because it makes the design and the design decisions we make about the people we are serving. And we forget that. We forget that's what we're doing. We're serving communities. So of course, their story, their narrative, their heritage should be present. And yes, it evolves, obviously. But if we're touching at it from these three different buckets, we started with where we were, how we got here, and where we're going. That's why it's important to make design decisions from that lens and not ego.
And I don't know if you want to talk about Berry Farm or if you want to talk about a different project, but just to help our listeners understand, maybe can you sort of talk about how you applied that within whichever project you want to
So
talk about?
What that starts to look like, we have one of our projects. It's on our website. It's called Station UNO, and the concept for that particular project was marks of a triumphant crest. And that this crescent shape had a lot to do with the Black Renaissance in the Shaw neighborhood of Washington, D.C., and the instrumentation of jazz sounds, the demarcation of African warriors, and these crescent shapes. So when you look at that photo, that kind of idea of crescent and demarcation is executed with these kind of half C crescent shaped, cascading gold coil drapery in this beautiful double height space. So that was a design decision, but from a kind of materiality standpoint, and there's also a space on the penthouse level where we did this beautiful metallic ceiling to bring in that color of that demarcation. So that is how, when we take these concept statements, marks of a triumphant crest, we have a project we're working on now. It's a boutique hotel and, agricultural concept. And our concept is ambered posies, right? Because this idea of farming and preservation. So those concepts, and they sound very, fluffy, woo-woo. We're not saying we want a mid-century modern, contemporary, biophilic. Like that's pedagogy. That's not story. That's how we translate our concepts, these prayers, these intentions, into actual design elements. It might look like our space plan, the space plan move that you see two-dimensionally that the residents in the community might experience. That's how we translate that into actual designed elements, from lighting to textiles to materials.
Wow. And so one of the other points that you talked about in the presentation that I heard, which links into that, is getting interior design into the whole integrated team approach that's so crucial to Passive House. So what you were just talking about, I mean, yeah, you're going to have to plan for that. It's not something you can add on at the end.
Absolutely.
So can you talk about how do you be sure that your concepts are integrated into the whole planning?
Oh man. Okay. So, all right. In a perfect world, we're really big on language at DBD. So everybody's our partner, our development partner, our architectural partner, our civil engineer partner. Everybody's a partner, right? That's our mindset. But everyone doesn't see us as a partner, Mary. They see it. So in a perfect world, our partners who create communities would look around the table, the proverbial table, and say, okay, we got civil, we got passive, where's interiors? Let's bring them to the table. Oh, what time do we want to bring them to the table? The same time y'all got there, right? Don't invite us to the table when dinner's over, right? Dessert is coming out. And that is when they typically get us involved in a project, is when dinner's ready, we clean the dishes, and that's, oh, now we need dessert. Come on, interiors. No. The minute we establish we're having a dinner party, we got to think about what we want to cook. That's the time. A lot of our architectural partners don't want to share, right? They don't want to share what's supposed to be on their plate. That's our biggest hurdle. Sometimes we go to the development partner and say, look, invite us to dinner. And once we have an architectural partner who sees our value and what we bring to the table, they make space for us right off the bat. But I love this dinner party analogy. This is my first time giving it. I think it works. That's when you bring us to the table in the beginning.
Yeah, I can see that. And I can also see that, I don't know, that in any Passive House project, you're juggling a lot of partners, you're juggling a lot of concepts, and you must have to kind of be the squeaky wheel to make sure you get included, right?
Yeah. So it's so funny because this is what we always say to our development partners. Look, I know you all are focused on this. And because you're focused on this, and then our architectural partners are kind of focused on this, but there's stuff right here that needs to be focused on right now. And when I think about it, we'll just, again, in the context of what we do, multifamily, this unit or this lobby or whatever, this unit needs a lot of attention. And they are so out here and then here and then here that this keeps getting overlooked, continues to get overlooked. And that looks like ugly finishes, antiquated finishes, unhealthy finishes, bad lighting, the materials and specification you use on the last 10 projects, which means as soon as you open your building 5 years later, you've already dated your project 15 years. But because they were thinking about this and this and this, I'm here. So you need us to get into those granular blind spots. Again, another example, an office space for the leasing team. We're so up here that we make the offices too small. They're really not functional. They're putting them in these, all glass boxes. It can't be productive. So while you're up here, we can be in here, truly thinking about how people are going to move through, live, fellowship, and work in the space. And we can be doing that in tandem. Yeah.
Right. I mean, sounds great to me. And
spread the gospel, Mary.
Well, I hope that's what we're doing.
Yes.
And, you brought up healthy materials, which is, and I wonder, is there more attention to healthy materials in the last 5 years than previously? And also for you, is specifying healthy materials getting any easier?
Okay. So, I'm gonna prep your listeners, because if they're coming, then I don't want them to be surprised. I feel like there's a lot of greenwashing. There is a lot of, we did the healthy thing to check a box or to get a sticker or a tax credit or for marketing, but not really, is it healthy and it is just beautiful. And there is a premium on healthy, beautiful product materials. And there's a markup, right? There's a cost for it to be healthy, which is why I don't think you are seeing more sustainable, beautiful, healthy materials and projects, right? If we've worked a lot with our friends over at the Healthy Building Material Labs to not put LVT flooring in our units because it's toxic. I don't care how you dress it up. Vinyl is vinyl is vinyl is vinyl. And we use a linoleum floor product. It's beautiful, like linoleum. It's not your grandmama's linoleum. We use a wood look product. And every time we try to specify that project, it gets VE'd out for cost. And we have large volume, but they're beautiful products. So I think the cost of the healthy material is still making it harder. We have been able to switch all the paints in our units to the truly only all natural paint, mineral paint on the market with the product called Kind. And again, this isn't about, it's healthy, it's beautiful. Those are small ways that we can bring in healthy materials, but that supply and demand is not really there to bring the cost of those goods down. So it's kind of like a green premium that we are still paying for on a lot of our projects. And now, remember I said my development partners up here and their funding and finance sources out there. Had we all been at that table in the beginning, we would have been so granular in that unit and said, here, price these products, the healthy ones, at the beginning of the job. Not 3, 4, 5 pricing exercises. And are you holding that in your budget and your estimate from your contract that you're kind of vetting? That's what we focus on so granularly that when you bring us to the table early, if you price it or budget for it in the beginning, that's how your specification sticks. And we try not to lose our specifications that way.
And, I'm sure you're constantly running up against, as you said, budget constrictions and healthy materials. So how do you balance that? I mean, you said bring it in early.
Okay. Oh, I'm gonna just say it. And you know what? We do what we call good, better, best. We put, especially in when we have large volume products, we put a good, better, best on our finish schedule every single time. The option we really want is the good. But what we have found is, unfortunately, construction, subcontractors and contractors, they're not very transparent in their pricing. So if we gave them one that we knew was in budget, they're going to say it's too expensive and give me something less than. So I've given you two options and what I really want. So we kind of like, what is it? We're kind of hiding it a little bit in there in plain sight in order to get there, because I think that's the flaw and around construction right now, the lack of pricing transparency. We also advocate for pricing transparency. We have a project right now, and they VE'd our entire lighting package. And I said, well, why? It's out of budget. And I'm like, is it though? And I called my rep. I said, hey, did they even call and price our fixtures with you? We haven't heard anything about this project. Oh, most firms will be like, okay, no, we will not accept any reselections until you confirm what is the pricing of the fixtures you're telling us we need to substitute. And did you call our rep and get the pricing? As a practice or practitioners, I think we've lost the fight. And is someone going to really be able to say, oh man, I walked into that space and it's something about this decorative pendant that makes me feel good? Maybe not, but I know.
Well, and probably everybody who walks in feels it, even if they don't know that that's what they're feeling.
I tell my team all the time, if you don't feel it, you won't fight for it.
Right.
And we adhere to our budgets because we make sure our contractors, our subcontractors, they price what we specify. And we're like a dog with a bone. We won't let go, because if we did our due diligence and know where we need to be from a budget perspective, then you do your job. That's how we really adhere to a lot of budget constraints. And we also do like material. So we'll use the same tile manufacturer on the whole job, because we're also thinking about it, from the perspective of the tile subcontractor. I don't have him or her to go to 12 different tile manufacturers. If we give them one tile manufacturer, they get more buying power. The same thing for the wall covering. So also streamlining our finish schedule to make sure we have the buying power and the volume with one manufacturer is another way, like we really try to maintain and work within our budget constraints.
Well, that sounds like some great tips.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to ask, are you working on any passive house projects currently?
We are, and it's not going well. It's not going well. There was a coordination issue. Our partners weren't talking. And the issue sounds dramatic, but it's dramatic in the sense that now all of the residential corridors will have 7'6" high ceilings. And I'm just like, I mean, I think this goes back to my point of like, there's so many people required to be at the table, and we gotta want to talk to each other without our egos and our own, wants and desires to do the greater good for community. And that's how we move the needle forward.
Right. Figuring out together how to make the project.
Yeah.
And So I should have asked this earlier, but you did
Mhm.
say that most of your work is with affordable housing
Mhm.
developments. What, when you say most, is that like,
I would say 80%, 80
uh-huh,
to 85%. That's the work we've chose to do. That was our mission. A lot of people take that work because it's, easy fee, low effort. We take it. We choose this path and this work because those are the people who need access to well-designed spaces the most.
right?
Yeah.
Kind of going back to the beginning of this
Mhm.
interview. Yeah, your own experiences. It's like people who are going to visit their relatives in prison, they need to have spaces that are not horrible to.
Yeah. We did this, and I'll try and find it and share it with you. We have this video on our website where we talk about like a young boy walking into an affordable housing community, and there's this policing that we advocate for in affordable housing. Cameras everywhere, hard surfaces. And what does that say to someone's psyche if growing up, every time they walked into their front door to their home, they were reminded they need to be watched? What does that do? What does that do to someone? And I think we are so removed sometimes from who we're serving. I often ask, is this a place you would want for your kid, your mother, your brother, your sister, or your grandmother, whoever? If not, do better, advocate for better.
Right. And I could go off on a whole tangent here of the experience that the younger generation doesn't get to have of not being watched all the time.
Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah. Yeah. And yeah.
So this last year, there have been some significant cuts in funding for
Woo.
social housing. And I just wonder how that's affecting your work.
We've been in business for 13 years, and one thing I've learned is always something in business. The '08 recession, it's always something. So I've learned to just stay the course, just keep doing the work. But this year, it's feeling a little, it's it is a lot. We're seeing a lot of our development partners struggle to close deals with funding. It is, I feel like your words matter, so I'm trying not to put that, like, I know the thing that is happening, but the more power and weight you give to it, the more you sit in it. Again, super woo woo, but it has been very, very, it's been something significant. It's been significant, and we're feeling it. And yeah, it's been significant, and we're seeing the effects of that. My job as a leader is to just keep going back to the purpose, to the why, to the people, and let that drive us, not the fear, not all the things out of our control.
Right. As you said, not sit in that fear space.
Yeah. Yeah. They're gonna be like, who is this girl talking all this woo-woo stuff?
Well, I look forward to hearing you talk at the conference. Really looking
I'm
forward to
excited.
that. And I really appreciate your time coming in today.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
It's been great talking to you. And again, everybody should go look at Determined by Design, see your beautiful designs. Really, really beautiful.
Thank you, my friend.
Well, thank you to Mary for bringing us that great conversation with Kia Weatherspoon. And yeah, it's something a little bit different, as I mentioned at the top, something a lot of us engineers and architects don't necessarily think of early on. And that whole idea of integrated design is something that a lot of us talk about. But we're often thinking about facility engineers and mechanical service engineers getting together with structural engineers and all very mechanical stuff and facade stuff. But as Kia made a really impactful start of that conversation, it's those interior spaces that have a long lasting deep impact on how people feel about buildings. And that also needs to be taken into account because, like the amount of glazing that is going to impact the sunlight, some of these things are hard to fix at the end if they haven't been allowed for at the beginning. So it may seem like we're stacking more and more things on more and more people that you need to get around the table at the beginning of the project. But I guess that's just how it is, Zach, that you
Yeah.
do need to have the whole team involved.
It sure seems like it, and I thought that her anecdote about the what has is frustrating about that passive house that she's working on now kind of drove home that point, right? That
Yeah.
yeah, if she had been there later, maybe those low ceilings would have been something they could have figured out how to avoid, and that there's this advocacy role that the different partners in on a team play, and if that voice isn't, if that voice of advocacy for a really important piece of the puzzle isn't there, then you end up sometimes with frustrating results. So
Mm.
yeah,
Yeah,
no,
absolutely.
I thought that was really, I liked Mary's question there about that parallel of that we're accustomed to talking about this in passive house. So it's clearly very important in interior design, and especially in terms of the way that Kia practices interior design. I mean, she clearly has such a mission-driven approach to the work, and this,
Mm.
she's using terms like being in service, and the commitment to affordable housing work being about serving people who need access to great spaces the most. That's a paraphrase, but I was really struck by kind of the righteousness of that path that she's on, and I
She
really
said
enjoyed it.
that the after talking about that model of around ancestry, identity, a legacy,
Yeah.
saying that the design concept that comes from that is, as she described it, a love letter to the community, which is a pretty beautiful way of summing all that up, to say that this is in service. It's a gift to what you're creating. It's not just a job,
Yeah.
yeah, and ticking
Yeah.
a box or fulfilling a utility. And that goes back to some of those pretty impactful experiences that she drew on, where some of the worst environments that we see are places like even hospitals, where it's just so
Mhm.
utility driven. And I think people are starting to think about that more now with modern spaces, where the hospitals don't have to look necessarily like hospitals in a
Right.
traditional sense. And
Yeah.
there's so many benefits to having them being more comfortable, inviting, ironically healthy spaces to be in. It kind of makes a lot of sense when you step back, but you understand the constraints of how we got there as well. So yeah, really interesting. And I guess on that practical side, I'm glad that Kia mentioned the frustration that she's experienced around price transparency. And I don't know
Hmm.
how to resolve that, because, and I know that there's an issue there with tendering processes, and a lot of people keeping their cards close to them, and not really, you're never really sure if you haven't worked with someone before, if they're telling you the true price or not. And I guess it all comes down to trust, and knowing the people you're working with, or having some way of trusting each other. But that is a real issue around pricing of anything and getting these things allowed for in the budget. I guess it's an ongoing challenge.
Yeah. I was also struck by her approach of streamlining the finish schedule. Like that seemed like, at least that's something, it's one of those situations where, okay, what's in my control. I think that was something that she talked about, actually, maybe reflecting on the times that we're going through, was what can I control, what's out of my control. And there's the ability to focus purchasing with one source to kind of increase the volume, and therefore the opportunity to get some volume pricing, and drive
Yeah,
costs down a little bit. Just
yeah,
going back to, you mentioned the ancestry, identity, and legacy, as and that kind of very much actually being the basis of the design concepts that she and her firm are putting together. That just leaps out from the screen on the website, and we encourage people to take a look at that. It's
yeah.
determinedbydesign.com, and we'll include a link in the show notes. It also leapt out when Kia presented at Passive House Accelerator Live a couple of years ago about the Berry Farm Passive House project. And that was a project that she did in collaboration with Michael Hindle, Passive to Positive. So I will also include a link in the show notes to that presentation. You can you'll see what I mean when you take a look at the work.
Yeah, awesome. All right. Well, thank you very much to Mary in her absence for doing that great interview, and thanks as well to Kia. Zach, we mentioned that Kia's coming up.
This week.
Tell us about that.
That's right. So we have our big Reimagine Buildings multifamily online conference this week on Thursday, March 12th. And Kia is going to be heading up hour 2 as part of a panel on multifamily foundations. So this is going to dive into the design, material, and systems decisions that shape cost, health, and performance. And Kia will be presenting with Shannon Pendleton, Ryan Abendroth, Stefan Goebel, Galen Stengel, Ed May. Really high-powered panel that is a really interesting, diverse group of professionals with coming from different aspects of it, or of the work. So I think it's going to be really fun. So please, folks, if you haven't already, check out the details about the Reimagine Buildings multifamily conference by visiting passivehouseaccelerator.com, and you will see at the top of the homepage a link to all the great programming that we have in store for you. Also for CEUs for AIA, PIAS, or PHI. And we just couldn't be more excited about this one. So we'll see you there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Get into it. All right. Well, thank you very much. Thanks for listening. And we'll be back again next week on the Passive House Podcast.